Hey, thank you to Jared Schuler for last week walking us through this passage. If you missed last week, I encourage you to go online and check that out. He did an excellent job walking us, getting us up to this point, and he ended at the end. It's kind of this strange passage that people have made a lot of hay about that I don't think is necessary to do, and I feel like he touched on this just exactly right. In verse 38 of chapter 22, when Jesus tells them that they should... That unlike the first time when he sent them out with nothing, that this time they should prepare to do everything. They should be ready with their own money bags and their own cloaks and their own whatever. And in fact, he says, if you don't have a sword, you probably ought to sell the cloak and get a sword. And they reply to him, look, Lord, verse 38, look, Lord, here are 2 swords. And he said to them, it is enough. Man, what a fascinating thing to have to wrestle through. I think what Jared said is exactly right, that here Jesus is talking about the life that's in their future, that this isn't about right now. Clearly, he's not talking about an armed revolution. 2 swords against the Roman government isn't going to accomplish anything, so clearly that's not what this is about. He's going to make that absolutely clear with Pontius Pilate when he says, my people will not revolt against you. And apparently, Jesus isn't even talking about like, in a few minutes, when a bunch of guys come to arrest me. No, it's not that time either. We'll get there in a second, and we'll look at it. But I agree. I think he's talking about the future when they're going to have to be prepared to take care of themselves, when they're going to be wandering from country to country and land to land, and they're going to need money bags, and they're going to need cloaks, and they may need swords. There's going to be random acts of violence and animal attacks and whatever else could be out there. And I think that's what he's telling them is, hey, think about the Apostle Paul and the travels that he did. He would go to a city and work for his food. He would go work and sometimes make tents and do all those things. So I think that's what's really talked about here, that what their lives are going to be like after Jesus ascends. I think this is similar for us as Christians as we wrap our brains around this picture. I think Nehemiah shows us very well, very in a wise way, the idea of posting guards on the wall and praying to God, that those aren't somehow in opposition to each other. And I think the temptation for us as Christians is to sometimes fight about, do we post guards or do we pray? Which one is the real, and what we see is maturity in Scripture is when people understand you post guards and you pray. This isn't hard work. Post guards, pray. Have swords, trust me. This is I think what's being talked about. Now, until a few weeks ago, I mentioned that we don't know where the upper room is or was, despite what people say. However, as I'm going to show you on a map in just a second, it is reasonable to assume it was in what we would call the upper area of Jerusalem. The map is reversed, and so it's going to look like the lower area of Jerusalem, but that's okay. The upper area, meaning uphill, area of Jerusalem, where the wealthy people lived. After all, it was described as, quote, a large upper room furnished. And so probably that makes sense. Then we piece together what we get from all 4 of the Gospels, and we end up with Jesus taking these now 11 disciples across the Kidron Valley to a garden that has a Gethsemane on it on the Mount of Olives. Now, I want you to see a Gethsemane, this isn't a garden owned or donated by Mr. and Mrs. Gethsemane. Gethsemane means olive press. So what it means is there's a garden, and in the midst of that garden is an olive press. Now, what's an olive press? I'll show you a couple of quick pictures. This is from the recreation in Nazareth Village. And so this, you have one of the presses, and then the next picture, you have the other type of press where the olives are pressed down and the oils are released out of the parts of the olives. And there's about an hour's worth of teaching just on olive presses, on how it connects to various things in Scripture. And the rabbis spend a lot of time talking about this. But for right now, what would serve, I think, is for you to know that there's an olive press and to know what olive presses are for. It's to put heavy weights on the olives until they are crushed to the point of giving out their oil. That's the idea. Now, there is a modern day place you can go that is the traditional site of, quote, the Garden of Gethsemane. I've got a picture of it. And it is, yes, beautiful. That's usually not what you think of. It's kind of like when people think of Texas, they don't picture East Texas. When you picture Israel, you don't picture something like this. And this may or may not be where the garden was. It's in the right general location. Some of these olive trees may actually be 2,000 years old. It is possible. The Romans stripped most of the olives from this part of the world, or from this section, the Mount of Olives, and maybe even salted the soil. But Some of these, like there's a really big one there in the middle, and olive trees can certainly get to be a couple of thousand years old. So maybe that one was there at the time of Jesus, and maybe this was the spot. We really don't know. What matters is it is a place where they were in the habit of going, and the imagery of a garden is pretty important in Scripture, isn't it? The concept of a garden is key. Man and woman were placed first in a garden. The city, the New Jerusalem, will be a garden city filled with plants and beautiful things. And here we have another vital garden. and we know what gates there are, and we even have a pretty good idea, you'll appreciate, of where the stairs are. The stairs have been uncovered that run from the northern part of the city down towards the Kidron Valley. From 2012, now over a decade ago, I have a picture, and it's being modeled well for us, of the stairs that were here. You can no longer sit there, by the way. There's now fences there, but this is the 2,000-year-old set of stairs running down from the northern end, the upper end. From the western end to the eastern side of the city, running down through. That's been found. That's pretty cool. We can see the map, how this would have played out. And so, hey, y'all turned the map. Well done. They corrected that. That's awesome. Okay, so good. Now it's correctly north and south. And so here we have probably the upper city. So somewhere in here, we don't know where, Jesus would have been having the meal with the Passover, and they would have come from down here, and they'd have gone down that set of stairs, all the way down here out the gate, probably down this gate near the Pool of Siloam, and marched all the way over here to where the Garden of Gethsemane would have been. Plenty of time for Judas to have gone and found the religious leaders, to have gathered together the mob with them to come and meet Jesus there. And I think it is clear that Jesus intentionally chose a place that they were in the habit of going so that Judas knew where to find them. That's what's going on there. Verse 40. And when he came to the place, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." By the way, let me stop for a second and let me explain why I sometimes do maps and pictures like that. It is a natural temptation of Protestant evangelical Christians to think of Israel as essentially like Narnia, or Wonder Goose Land, or something, whatever. That we picture this like, oh, it's this fictional location. No, it's an actual place. You can go there. And there's 2,000-year-old sets of stairs that Jesus almost certainly would have been dragged up and down by Caiaphas's soldiers. Like it's a real place with real dirt that you can actually go visit, and I think it's key for us to understand that. We're not being asked to believe in something that's not historical, that's not real. Now, this isn't a fairy tale. So when he came to the place, the garden at the Gethsemane, he said to them, "Pray that you may not enter into temptation." Now, he's already warned Peter. Hey, Peter, we're going to point this out in a second, but he's already warned Peter, Satan wants to sift you. And now what's interesting is Jesus does not tell Peter whether Satan got permission to sift Peter, but he warns Peter, be prepared. And that's when Peter makes his grand declaration that we'll look at in a minute. All of them are going to flee except maybe John, with Peter skulking along behind. He knows what's coming. Stop and pray. Jesus knows he only has hours left on earth before his crucifixion, and what he decides to do with that is pray. Man, what a great theology of prayer Jesus had. I would be trying to, wrap some things up and pay some bills or whatever. I don't know what I would be doing with the last few hours of my life. What Jesus decides to do is pray. He withdrew from them about a stone's throw and knelt down and prayed, saying, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." Now, confession time. My confession is that I think for a large portion of my Christian life, I felt like this whole passage was greatly disingenuous. See, I had this image growing up that Jesus was essentially experiencing the life of a God on earth in a human costume. That he probably floated a couple of inches above the ground. And the scenes like this, like the temptation with Satan early at the beginning of his ministry career, that's kind of a checked box. Like, hey, we need to do the whole temptation thing, right? I mean, we got to check that box. So you tempt me. Okay, good. Now I'm going to quote Deuteronomy back to you. Okay, try again. Okay, good. Now I quote Deuteronomy again to you. Okay, give it one more shot. All right, okay, cool. And I quote Deuteronomy to you again, and we're done. And that's how I think pictured it, and this scene felt the same to me. They're on the same team, guys. He's not really going to suffer. Okay, sure, his human body's going to suffer, but he's God. He's not going to experience any of this for real. And that's how I had pictured it. And that is wrong. That is absolutely incorrect as to what's going on here. I'm trying to kind of connect to this. I went down a rabbit hole, which is the appropriate term in this situation. I went down a rabbit hole in an effort to kind of engage with human beings who try to live as things other than human beings. I don't encourage it. It gets weird fast, really, really fast. And so, and I thought about showing some examples and showing some pictures and that kind of stuff. And again, weird stuff automatically happens. But there are people out there who claim to experience life as everything from mermaids and elves and dragons to like badgers, which I can appreciate. Of all the animals to choose, badger seems like not a bad one. So badgers, all kinds of household pets. There are people who claim to live that way. And I found one in particular I thought about introducing you to who experiences life as a dog, he says, which again was the first thing that drew my attention. He says. And I was like, wait, I'm literally reading an interview with a guy who claims to be a dog. And I think an interview with an actual dog would not be very interesting. Like, I think it'd be pretty one-sided, don't you? Like, he's sitting there having an interview. I'm like, you're not experiencing life as a dog. Wait a minute. I think you're just a human in a dog costume, right? I had two pictures. I saw two pictures of him. One where he's sitting kind of like, in an effort to look like a dog, sitting on the couch. And in the other one, he's literally leaned back with his legs crossed. And I was like, see, no, you lost me. You lost me. So that's not this. Jesus wasn't God experiencing life in a man costume. He was fully God and experiencing life as a man, fully man. He wasn't wearing a costume. He didn't float above the ground. He did everything humans do. He had all the same biological imperatives that humans have. He was sick and he was weary. He was sad and he was angry. He was scared and he felt alone. He had to learn things and he had to grow. He experienced life as a human in all ways as we are tempted. Philippians 2 tells us this. This is the Apostle Paul slamming shut the door of anything other than that understanding. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form, morpheo, of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, because he was, but emptied himself by taking on the form, morpheo, of a servant, being born in the likeness, homo ioma, of men, meaning the same as, and being found in human form, Greek word schema. There are three Greek words that could be potentially used here. And so the Apostle Paul uses all three to shut the door. Jesus Christ was man. He was not only man, he was servant. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even the death of a cross. This is not a man costume. This is a man. Jesus Christ, the man, the servant. He was man, the same as man. He was God, the same as God. This is a big deal, and it plays out here in the Garden of Gethsemane in a shocking way. Because when you're God, you actually understand justice. And if you really understand justice, then you actually understand injustice. And if you actually understand injustice, then you actually understand wrath. You actually get it. We nibble at these concepts. We kind of get this justice concept and this injustice concept. I remember being in a conversation with an atheist years ago, who in the conversation said to me, because he didn't know I did things other than just preach on Sunday mornings, and he goes, you probably live a pretty sheltered life, Chris. I mean, you probably don't know that much about real suffering. And I was like, well, let me tell you what else I do for a living. And let me tell you about some of the clients who I'm working with. Because I will tell you, I have heard of and experienced, and honestly, I've experienced pain as you have, but I have been witness to and engaged in the types of injustice and the type of pain that it is nothing but God that has kept me from going and hunting down and ending abusers. The level of rage that I have felt in my heart at what some of the people who God has put in my life, what they've experienced, I don't even know how to measure it. And my rage is nothing compared to God's rage about this. It is nothing. I don't even fully understand the injustice. He understands in a way, Jesus understands the victim and the victim's experience in a way that even the victim doesn't. He fully understands injustice. He fully understands wrath. And Jesus knows that he's about to carry the wrath of God against the sins of all of mankind. And he understands what that means. And he's also a man. So in that moment, the amount of terror he must feel knowing what's coming. Do you feel sometimes, every once in a while, do you just for a moment feel the weight of your sin? If you ever, God even gives you, just exposes the tiniest corner of that, just for a second, and you feel the weight of that. Now multiply that times the race of mankind. And a full understanding. He knows we must be cleansed by the purifying agent of God's holy, righteous fire. Yes, he will face all of the rage of a defeated Satan. Yes, he will face all of the wickedness of the worst that man can deliver. But my full belief is that is nothing compared to the anguish of experiencing the full wrath of God against the sins of mankind. Jesus knew that those would be placed on his record and on his head. And finally, he knows that the cup of God's righteous wrath will be nothing short of devastating. And as a man, he is afraid. He is filled with the terror of what is coming. Do you ever fear death? If you ever think about death and the scariness of not knowing exactly what's coming, not knowing exactly what that experience is going to be like, no matter how strong your faith, there's also some part of you that knows, man, no one's been there and come back except Jesus. Like this, that's a pretty small population. Maybe just surgery. You're going into surgery. You know you got surgery and you get real nervous about it. And you feel those nerves about it. Maybe just a hard meeting. You know you might get fired in the meeting and the nerves you feel, the annual evaluation that we get, like you can feel nervous about that. Mine's coming up this week, by the way. Now you take the cup of a holy God's wrath at sin and realize you're going to get to drink it down. I think that's what this cup is Jesus is referencing, is his wrath. Jeremiah 25 and Isaiah 51 both reference the cup of the wrath of God. I think that's what's being talked about there. Verse 43, and there appeared to him an angel from heaven strengthening him. And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly. The sweat became like great drops of blood falling down to the ground. Now you understand the image of the Gethsemane. Jesus is in this place being crushed. And the blood is being forced out of his pores, maybe literally. It's hard to know in the language. Does this mean that his drops of sweat were like drops of blood, or does it literally mean, and I think that's probably correct, that Jesus, in fact, is experiencing what doctors call hematidrosis, where the blood vessels around your sweat glands burst and literally blood comes out of your sweat glands. I think that's probably what he's experiencing because he is now being crushed. As Isaiah says, he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. And with his wounds we are healed. He's already feeling the bearing weight coming down on him. And what's with the angel? I think the angel is a perfect picture of the truth that Jesus Christ is experiencing life as a man. God doesn't need supernatural angelic help to get back up on his feet. But Jesus does here because he's experiencing the fullness of what it means to be man. He needs supernatural comfort, just like after the 40 days of fasting and facing Satan. It says in Matthew 4:11, then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. That word there is kind of a comfort, like a warm hug, a cup of soup, a cup of tea type of language. This, in the Garden of Gethsemane, is the word that means to help a person who's struggling to their feet, to offer some strength to someone who has no strength. Here Jesus is depleted, possibly barely even able to stand. Imagine an angel coming and helping Jesus to his feet. When Jesus decides it's time to rise and he can't get up and an angel appears to help him to his feet. He is God, and I believe by the power of being divine, he can freely choose. Is he going to follow through with the plan designated by the Godhood before the creation of time? Or is he, in fact, going to turn away from that cup and let man drink the wrath of God alone? And here he has chosen not my will, but yours. He's won the battle already. He is staying the course. Death and sin and Satan have lost in the Garden of Gethsemane. They may or may not know it. They are toast. They're done. Jesus has declared their death in this moment when he stands up. I love that in the Passion of the Christ, the old one from a few years ago, I love the fact that this is the moment when Jesus crushes the head of the serpent. It's not at the tomb, it's not at the cross, it's not at the trial, it's in the Garden of Gethsemane. It is done, except it's not quite done. The arrest and the trial and the beating and the crucifixion are still to come, but the decision to accept the Father's will over his human will, that is done. It may not be finished, but all that's left is to finish it. Verse 45. And when he rose from prayer, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping for sorrow. And he said to them, "Why are you sleeping? Rise and pray that you may not enter into temptation." As was their habit, the disciples, including the big three, are too busy sleeping to pray. So they missed the angel. They missed all of this experience. They missed most of part of this. And wouldn't you love to be able to judge them for this? I would love to be able to. It would be raw hypocrisy for me to do so, though. How many times have I fallen asleep in an effort to pray? How often do we get things out of alignment like that? And by the way, it says they're sleeping for sorrow. So it's not just that they're tired and just that they're exhausted after the Passover and just that from the long walk and just that it's dark and it's a comfortable place, maybe the cool of the Gethsemane, but in fact, they are worn out by the hurt that they feel, the pain, the fear, all of those things. They are worn out by all of this, the confusion. The spirit may be willing, but once again, the flesh is weak. Verse 47, and while he's speaking, there came a crowd, and the man called Judas, one of the 12, was leading them. Remember, Luke probably never met Judas. He only knows of this secondhand. So he drew near to Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him, "Judas, would you betray the Son of Man with a kiss?" Probably just like in the Middle East now, it's not uncommon for you to greet a close friend with a kiss. There are people who, when I'm over there, who will greet me with a kiss. That's not uncommon. And probably the same thing is the truth there. But notice the attention that Jesus brings to this. He doesn't say you would betray me with a kiss. He says you'd betray the Son of Man. This is Jesus' title. He's given himself over and over again. Remember that understanding. This is the divine Messiah of Almighty God. This title is given to him by Daniel 600 years before. And Jesus has used this over and over again. He is the one to whom all authority will be given. His kingdom will have no ending, as Daniel prophesies. And Jesus is now looking Judas in the eye and saying, "Seriously? You're going to betray the Son of Man? What could you possibly be thinking?" We unpacked some of Judas's possible motivations a few weeks ago. And maybe one of them was that he's trying to hurry along the messianic movement. If that's the case, what a slap in the face this must be. Really, Judas? This is how you're going to do this? Is by betraying the Son of Man, God's chosen anointed one, and you're going to do it with a kiss? The sign of affection and friendship, of safety? Really? By the way, Judas gets the great distinction of being the only person that we see to greet Jesus with a kiss. There's a woman who kisses his feet several times at Simon the Pharisee's house. That's it. What a thing to be known for. Barnes notes, one of the commentaries that I love, summarizes it like this: the sign of friendship and affection employed in a base and wicked purpose, intending to add deceit, disguise, and the prostitution of a mark of affection to the crime of treason. Verse 49. And when those who were around him saw what would follow, they said, "Lord, shall we strike with the sword?" They're probably thinking Judas. And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. Now, we know from other gospel accounts that this is not just a random disciple. This is Peter. So some of the disciples turned to Jesus and essentially asked, "Is this what the swords were for? Is this why you wanted us to have the two swords? Is this the time? This is the time. Is this the time?" Peter doesn't wait and ask. He just acts. Very Peter. He just acts. He's probably, most agree that Peter's probably going for a killing blow, but just catches the ear of Malchus. We know from the Gospel of John, John gives us names to all of this. For Malchus, the servant of Caiaphas. But Jesus said, no more of this. And he touches the ear and heals him. Wrong time. Peter, you missed it. Bad timing. No, sir. Now, why does Jesus heal him? I think there's a couple of reasons here. I think one is that this is Jesus, and he is merciful. And so in his mercy overflowing, he heals this servant. No, it's probably not a life-threatening wound, but Levitical law teaches that anyone who has been disfigured cannot enter into the temple grounds. And so this is the servant of the high priest, probably important for him to be a part of the temple. And so Jesus, in humble mercy, heals the man's ear, so he's no longer disfigured. I don't know how you portray this more perfectly, the idea of him just sitting there, holding his ear. In the middle of this tumult, Jesus reaches down and heals it, and then they get back to everything else, and that guy's just still sitting there. I imagine an hour later, he's still sitting there in the Garden of Gethsemane, holding his ear, stunned, like, what just happened? What did I just experience? Now, I also think this is to protect his followers. Jesus is going to lower the heat. The heat is rising. We're about to have a full pitched battle here between maybe his disciples, or at least Peter, and whatever this mob is. And Jesus doesn't want that to happen. So him stepping in and doing this silences everything, but most importantly, it draws all the attention to him. He then calls out the hypocrisy of the leaders. He gets up in their face. You can imagine that as they're arresting him, putting his hands behind his back to tie them off. Verse 52, then Jesus said to the chief priests and officers of the temple and the elders who had come out against him, have you come out as against a robber, a rebel, with swords and clubs? When I was with you day after day in the temple, you didn't lay hands on me. He's calling them out. You could have arrested me at any point. I've been talking with you every day for the last week in the temple. He knows the truth. He knows they're cowards and that they're afraid. And then you can imagine Jesus looking up and going, whew, it's dark. It's your hour. This is the time when dark people who are dark in their hearts, this is when they act. People who have things to hide, this is when they act. But this is your hour in the power of darkness. He's calling them out on their hypocrisy, and they know it, by the way. These are the teachers of the law. They know that everything they're doing is totally out of line. Verse 54, then they seized him and led him away, bringing him into the high priest's house, and Peter was following at a distance. It seems like young John was following them. This passage causes some people to think, by the way, that either someone other than John wrote the Gospel of John, or maybe someone with John was writing the Gospel of John. It's uncertain why a young fisherman from Galilee would have access to the high priest's house, why he would know anybody. But that's not, certainly it could just be John, that someone else does, or that he does. Now somehow he's known to the officials and they let him stay in the vicinity of the action. The Apostle Peter skulks along behind. They go to the house of the high priest. Probably none of this is legal. It's hard to know again. Most of the laws about this kind of stuff were actually written down a couple of hundred years after Jesus. But likely some of those things were in place. They weren't supposed to do trials this way at all. They aren't supposed to do it this close to Sabbath. They're not supposed to do it after dark. All these things are completely out of line. Verse 55, and when they had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, Peter sat down among them. Now it is intriguing, again, that we get more detail in the other Gospels sometimes. In one of the other Gospels, this is made very, very clear that this is a charcoal fire. I don't know the full significance of that. The Romans were there, which means that by now there weren't a lot of trees. Romans decimate forests. It's what they did more than anything else. It takes a lot of wood to heat your emperor's heated and steam-powered house. And so there weren't many trees probably left around, so they had started using bits of charcoal, burned pre-charred wood to kind of create fire. So here you have a little fire. Peter sat down among them, verse 56. Then the servant girl, seeing him as he sat in the light and looking closely at him, because it probably doesn't produce much light, said, this man was also with him. But he denied it, saying, woman, I don't know him. And a little later, someone else saw him and said, you are also one of them. But Peter said, man, I am not. And after an interval of about an hour, still another insisted, saying, certainly this man was also with him, for him too is a Galilean. His accent has given him away. We understand that, don't we? But Peter said, man, I do not know what you're talking about. And immediately while he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. Now, just in case you have not been in church probably ever, and you don't know this, remember that just a little while this exchange happened. Luke 22:33. Peter said to him, Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and death. And Jesus said, I tell you, Peter, the rooster will not crow this day until you deny 3 times that you know me. So Jesus told him it was going to happen. And then he challenged him to pray. And apparently Peter was not ready for this moment. And I know there are many idioms about what the rooster crowing could indicate. What matters is there's a set moment in time. And Jesus says, before that set moment in time, which you will know, when that hits, you will already have denied me, even just knowing me, 3 times. And now here we have Peter warming himself by a charcoal fire while Jesus is inside being beaten and tortured and mocked. He gets called out 3 times. The Gospels it's not totally clear what's going on with these people, who they exactly are. One is a servant girl, everyone seems to agree. The second one is someone, maybe even the same servant girl or a different one. Number 3 is a man who notes who Peter is by his accent. They pretty much agree on that. And John tells us, by the way, this isn't just some dude. This is the relative of the man that Peter had struck his ear off. So this guy was in the Garden of Gethsemane with them. He saw Peter do this thing. And you can imagine he sits down. Peter probably recognizes him and is like, oh boy, right? And the guy's like, wait a minute, you're the guy who smacked my brother in the head. I know you. You're one of the people who followed Jesus. And the other Gospels let us know that Peter at this point starts calling down curses upon himself. I don't know exactly what those are. With God as my witness, I am not that man. May God strike me dead. I am not that man. I have no idea what you're talking about. And those words are still coming out of his mouth, and a rooster crows. And that would be staggering enough. Oh, the pride. Oh, the self-confidence. I will die for you. Deny you? Impossible. It's unthinkable. I'm ready to go to prison and death. And by the way, he kind of was, wasn't he? I mean, he did, after all, start a fight with a whole mob full of people. Peter was apparently willing to die in the garden. His passion was up. He was fresh and thinking about it on his mind. He was ready to hold fast. But a few hours later, things seem to be falling apart. Jesus seems to be on the road to death, not leadership. Tired, cold, and confronted, the flesh is weak again. I think Peter's confused, and a confused Peter, like most men when we're confused, is not good. He reacts. He denies all 3, and everyone overhears. His denial escalates. Luke gives us now a detail. Not only does the rooster crow and Peter realize it, but listen to what Luke tells us, and only Luke gives us this, verse 61. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter. Probably as Jesus is being dragged out of Caiaphas' house towards Herod's house, and he looks up and makes eye contact with Peter. And Peter remembered the saying of the Lord, how he'd said to him, before the rooster crows today, you'll deny me 3 times. And Peter went out and wept bitterly. We don't hear from Judas again in the book of Luke. Not until the book of Acts do we hear from Judas again. After Judas kisses Jesus, he's no longer part of the story until we hear about his death in the book of Acts, when Peter calls for his replacement. Matthew gives us all this insight into Judas that we've talked about, Matthew tells us how Judas returned with the money in regret. But we don't get this kind of language, that he wept bitterly when he realized his sin. Peter's emotion is a response to his sudden awareness. He is overcome with revulsion and shock at himself, at what he's done. In fact, he's largely struck dumb by it, because unless I've missed it, Peter does not speak again in the book of Luke or Matthew or Mark. In fact, I decided to take the last of our time here, and I don't want to draw anything away from Jesus, but to wrap up Peter's story. Plus, for those who remember, this is maybe one of my favorite things in all of human history, this account. So back to Peter being silent, and remember how out of character that is. Jesus shows up 8 times after the resurrection that we know of, during the resurrection. Twice to the women in the tomb area, first 2. Third one is to some followers who left town, headed to Emmaus. The next one he shows up, 10 of the disciples there, Thomas is missing. The next one he shows back up, apparently just to welcome Thomas, just to encourage and show Thomas the truth, to kind of confront Thomas in a friendly gesture of, no, stick your finger in my wounds and your hand in my side, Thomas. And it's a really beautiful moment. But what's wild is we get nothing from Peter in either one of those, nothing. When The Chosen portrays this, at some point, I hope they show Peter sitting off the side in a corner, maybe in a shadow, trying very, very hard not to make eye contact with Jesus again. The last time he made eye contact with Jesus was the night of the crucifixion, and now he's trying very hard because I think Peter probably thinks he doesn't belong anymore. He has put his hand to the plow and he's looked back. And Peter knows what Jesus says about that. After this, we get his first words in the book of John. In John 21:3, Simon Peter said to them, I'm going fishing. Is this Peter just doing what fishermen do when they're confused and they don't know what else to do? They go fishing. Or is this Peter going, probably time to crank up the old career? Then you have this. They said to him, we'll go with you. A handful of the disciples go with him. And they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. So they toil all night and they catch nothing. I can imagine around the middle of the night, Big James going, man, when was the last time we fished all night and caught nothing? Well, that's crazy. Fished all night and caught, that's nuts. When was the last time that happened? I can tell you. I don't know about you guys, but I've been studying Luke for the last 16 months. So in Luke chapter 5, we get that insight. Simon answered, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets. This is when Jesus calls Peter the first time. It's the night after Peter's caught nothing all night. I begin to wonder, at what point did Peter get nervous that they would catch something? At what point during the night does he realize we're not catching anything? The professional fishermen, and we're catching absolutely nothing. Every time he reaches out and pulls the net, nothing, and they empty it out and it's nothing. And at what point during the night did Peter begin to wonder what's going on here? At this, I want you to catch this, church, at this miraculous no fish. This is not the miraculous catch, this is the miraculous no catch. I want you to take a second. I don't want to overteach this, but I want you to take just a second and imagine, could it be possible that you not getting what you're trying to get is a miracle from God? Just breathe in that for a second. But now you're going to have to hold your breath again, because I think Peter was holding his breath. As his eyes start cutting off to the shore, the sun comes up at about 6:30 this time of the year in Israel. So I'm imagining at some point during the night, Peter's tension is growing. Every time they pull the net in, no fish, not even one, nothing. And his heart is starting to pound in his chest. And what is going on here? And his eyes are starting to cut over to the shoreline near where the boats were, near where Jesus called him the first time. And sometime, 4:30 in the morning, suddenly there's a little orange glow over there. Someone started a little fire. And he keeps looking, and as they pull the fish in, and he keeps looking, and then sure enough, it gets light enough, and they can see there's a silhouette of a man standing there on the shore. And the man says, children, you got any fish? One word answer, no. Verse 6 of chapter 21. And he said to them, cast the net onto the right side of the boat, and you'll find some. So they cast it in. Can you be Peter here for a minute? They throw it back in on the right side. Can you imagine he reaches into the water and grabs the net and starts to just tug, and it doesn't come. And they have to start pulling harder. Now they're pulling back and leaning back, and they're pulling it in, and it's a massive catch of fish, bigger than anything that says they cast in, and we're not able to haul it in because of the quantity of fish. Now, why on the right side? I don't know. Maybe this is a right-left reference like Jesus likes to do about the sheep and the goats or whatever. But here's what I think. Our family verse is Psalm 16:11. You make known to me the path of life. In your presence is the fullness of joy, and your right hand are pleasures forevermore. I think Jesus is saying you're looking in the wrong place. You're out there on the sea. You're in the wrong place. Look over to the right. I'm certainly a fan of that idea. John, always the stater of the obvious, says, it's the Lord. You think? Peter's heart must be bursting. That word launches him like a coiled rope. Lord, my only hope, my only purpose. We have to accept what he gives and accept what he withholds. And Lord to Peter means jump. This is Peter's trigger word. In fact, what it says in the Greek is that he threw himself into the sea. That's not an idiom from the Greek into the English. That's what the Greek says. In fact, it's the same word that when Jesus told his disciples, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. So Peter throws himself away into the Sea of Galilee. And then he swims the 100 yards or so, as John says, to shore, and apparently awkwardly stands there dripping while the boat catches up with him. Because it says, then he's the one who pulled the fish up onto the shore. Man, what's going on? And here, he sees Jesus sitting by, are you ready? A charcoal fire. That's not subtle. The same kind of fire that Peter sat by and warmed himself that night. Did his heart freeze? He tells him to bring some fish, by the way. He tells him to bring fish, not men. Fish. I think this probably spoke to Peter too. Peter, what are you doing here? You're not supposed to be catching fish. That's not what I sent you to do. Then of all things, by the way, John loves the fact, and only a fisherman could appreciate this, John brings very much strong attention to the fact that the nets didn't tear. That's a miracle that only a fisherman can really appreciate. In the midst of all this, John is like, and the nets didn't tear. Can you believe it? I just love that. It's so real. Then Jesus begins to break bread and give pieces to them. Not subtle. He starts breaking the bread. Jesus can feed thousands with 2 fish and some bread. What's he going to do with 153 fish? After breakfast, Jesus and Peter have one of the most amazing conversations that anybody's ever had. Jesus is going to ask a question 3 times, and Peter will answer 3 times. Not subtle. 3 times. But in the conversation, Jesus will slightly change the things, and here I think we'll find some really amazing stuff. For the sake of time, I'm going to just show you what I think are the key point here. If you want a more complete engagement with this, I unpacked this passage on December 8th, 2019. If only we had known what was going on then, huh? As we unpacked the things about this passage more. Jesus changes 3 key things in this repeated conversation. So first question, Simon, son of John, and let me call for these as they're going, not these, sorry, you're fine, but the next part. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? First, notice Simon, not Peter. Do you think Peter's heart froze? I do. I think Peter's like, and that's the ball game. I'm about to get sent home. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Now there's debate on what these are. My opinion is it's the fish. My opinion is he's saying, Simon, do you love me more than this? Is this what you want to go back to doing? Or me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Then feed my lambs. Simon, son of John, do you love me? Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Well, then tend to my sheep. Simon, son of John, do you love me? This time Peter is filled with pain and dismay and grief. Lord, you know everything and you know that I love you. Then feed my sheep. One thing that changes is what Peter's supposed to do. Sometimes it's feed and sometimes it's tend. Probably, as an 11th century Bible teacher wrote, feed here is the more gentle provision. Take care of them. Be sweet to them and kind to them and gentle with them. That's by the way, the tend is the more direct, authoritative type of care. This is from the root word that means shepherd. So a little more strict, authoritative. You need to be doing both. And who is it supposed to be? 2 different populations, little lamb and sheep. The newborn lambs are little lambs. These are probably the new converts and the baby believers and those who are broken and hurting, so in order to comfort the afflicted. And then you have the sheep, probably now the disciples who need guidance and direction and confrontation. So here you see Jesus clarifying Peter's job description. And by the way, it doesn't involve fish. Maybe Jesus is like, maybe I wasn't clear enough when I said you'd be fishers of men. Maybe that confused you. So let's take the fish out of the equation entirely and let's start calling you a shepherd. Feed my little lambs. Tend my sheep. And by the way, feed my sheep. This is your job description. And amazing as these are, church, the most amazing thing, the greatest gut punch in this is when you look into the Greek. So I'm going to call for these. First one. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? This is what we look at when we're studying in the Greek. It's an interlinear, English, Greek, and this is a transliteration into the English lettering. Do you love me? Agape, agapeo. Are you all in? Are you devoted? Will you live for me and die for me? Will you choose me at the cost of anything else and everything else? Do you love me, Peter? And I think Peter, whose pride is broken, who now he's been crushed, says yes. Next slide. Yes, Lord, you know that I love. Different word. This is the Greek word phileo. It's a weaker kind of love. It's the love of a friend or a brother. It's a powerful one, but it's not agape. Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. I'm a huge fan, right? I'm a huge fan. I think you're amazing. I really, this is all I can give. I can be a friend. The second time Jesus is going to ask him, don't change the slides yet. He's going to ask him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Same word, agapeo, agape. Do you agape me? Will you give everything for me? Will you live and die for me? And Peter the second time says, Lord, I philos you. I'm telling you the truth. This is all I have to give. Jesus has come all this way. He's created this whole script. He's created a skit to reinstate Peter, right? This whole thing, this whole not catching fish all night. The 3 questions, the charcoal fire, the fish, every bit of this is about him reinstating Peter. Jesus has made all of this effort, and he's come all the way up to this thing, and he's going, Peter, I need you to take one step to one. I've taken all the others. Just take one more step to me. Will you love me? And Peter says, I can't. So Jesus asks him a third time. Now put it up. Simon, son of John, do you phileo me? I think Jesus here is saying, then I'll take it. I'll take the last step. If friendship is what you have to give me, then friendship is what I'll take. If that's all you have, he's come so far. And here he takes another step, the last step, right there into Peter's arms. If that's what you have, this is the comfort to me that I can't even begin to express. I who would love to say I always agape God, but the truth is sometimes I'm kind of a friend, not always a devoted follower. And so for him to say, well, then you know what, son, that's what we'll do. Let's start there. He's come so far and he comes one more step. And I think Peter is brokenhearted, is crushed by this moment, not because he said it a third time, although that matters, but because he realizes what Jesus has said. Peter's pride is gone. His life is in Christ, or it's nothing. I don't know about you, but I can't believe that Jesus accepted me. You don't know me as well as I know me, but if you knew me better, you would be surprised that he accepted me. I suspect you're surprised. If you know yourself well, you're surprised he accepted you, that he wants us, that he knows us and chooses us anyway. Church, he's here. He's come right here up to that, right there in our face. He takes those last steps. Has our heart grown so cold that we can't even accept him there? That we won't even accept what he offers us? Are we that prideful? Are we that tough? Are we that afraid? Are we that untrusting? Peter faced all of those things in just a few days. I know you're afraid. I am too. I'm often afraid of what's coming, and I'm afraid of what it means to follow him. And I know that you are weary and heavy laden at times. And if you're not afraid, it may just be your raw narcissistic pride that keeps you from being afraid. And that's not any better. That he would offer that up to us. I know we are weary and heavy laden. And he said, come to him so he can rest us. Stand if you will. I don't know what the Spirit is speaking to you in this. I've told you before, I don't tear up a lot during the sermons, although I came dang close just then. But man, during the week writing this stuff, it just struck me again, the power of this. How much love Jesus has for Peter. And the thought that that love might include me as well is just an amazing thought. If you would like to pray with somebody about anything, if you're like, I need to get to know that God is a God I'm interested in. Or maybe you've run from that God in your pride or in your fear or in your doubts, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And he's saying, no, come home, sinner, come home. Whatever it is, wherever you are in that, I pray you will listen to the Spirit and you'll come up. So you're welcome to come up and pray with these who are here, or me, I'll be down here as well. If you've been through our welcome home process and you've talked to Lance and others and you're ready to come and join our dysfunctional family, would love for you to let us know about that this morning as well. Let me end this time from Hebrews 13 as the author of Hebrews quotes the 95th Psalm. As it is said, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as in the rebellion. The very words of God.